Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale of your faithful trip. It started in the firmament, and then we all got tricked. Life was great when we were young, with all the things we believed. Then it all got hard, unbearable, and we know we're being deceived. Forgotten, ignored, secret, and hidden. Topics that talk about how water is knowledge. Now drink from the fountain. Let's pour some on you now. Hello, guys. Welcome to Play Mundane Show. This is Alex. Today we're going to talk about a topic that I just found, and I found a website, and there is a doctor who has written this article about how chicken meat causes urinary tract infections, higher rates of urinary tract infections, especially in women. And I don't believe it. And not only do I not believe it, but I can tell you why I don't believe it and how this is more sensational journalism. And it's against the complex, the chicken complex industry and the produced chicken that comes from tight enclosed areas, and how that may be worse in some ways than free range chicken. There are some things to talk about on those 2 points. You know, the confinement method for chickens that live, let's say 49 to the most 54 days, 52 days. Most of them live for, say, 48 days. But the reason why I want to talk about this article is because I'm about as close as you get to an expert in the industry, okay, that's not a PhD pathologist working for the Center for Disease Control, which I know them. I've been to the meetings in Atlanta. Okay, I had to because I sold vaccines and I designed farm programs for chickens with their medicines. All right, so I think I'm very qualified to talk on this subject. And I'm looking at a person who's writing this article, and I'm not going to insult the person who wrote this article because he might be otherwise a very bright physician and doing the best he can, and I might actually enjoy his website if I look a little more through it. But this particular article, kind of like urban legends, it tends to pervade, you know, that things nasty come from factory produced chickens, as they call it. And here, even in this article, the recommendation is to go get your free range chicken and chicken that are grown naturally in their environment. And I'm here to tell you that does not exist. It's loopholes within the interpretation of the industry, okay? When you see something on a label that says this chicken is free of hormones, well, they all are. Hormones don't work in chickens like they work in beef. There's no growth promoter. In fact, that's what this whole freaking article is about, is antibiotics used for growth promotion and how they can cause antibiotic resistance. That part is true, but it doesn't cause E. coli to get from that chicken into your urinary tract. I do not believe that, and I'm going to tell you why, because I know the process of production. And at the end, like I said, he's promoting free range. You know what free range chicken is? You know, in those chicken houses you see, they're usually 120, 100 meters long. They've got the big fans on the end. They've got curtains and for inclement weather. They've got the feeders and the drinker lines on the inside. You may have, you know, anywhere from 28,000 to 30-something thousand birds living in a house. They're chicken houses. They're not warehouses. They're chicken house. It's a chicken house. And a lot of farms, most of them have 4 to 6 chicken houses, and you have a manager on that farm. And what you have to watch is your rodent control. The reason why you have bacterial and parasitic infections is because you're not leaving the houses open and cleaned out and fumigated for a sufficient amount of days when you empty a flock before you put your next young birds down that just came from the hatchery. Okay, now I've designed vaccine programs in the chicken house. I've literally been to thousands of chicken houses in about 60 countries around the world, traveling as the chicken man. Nobody really knew what I did, but I worked with pathologists and I worked for the vaccine lab. And then from that job, I got to know all of the major factory produced chicken operations in the world. And I was hired by a chicken incubator company to go around and sell capital equipment so that they could expand their production for the broiler chickens and setters and hatchers, and that came with automation equipment and tray washers and vaccination tables and sexing tables and vaccines with dye. You know, we had red dye and green dye. Now that might be why you see chickens when they arrive to the farm, they're kind of orange because they have a red dye that's put inside of the vaccine when they're vaccinated in ovo, injected, which means they're injected in the egg a day and a half before they hatch. And that makes them kind of orange, but it wears off. And I've heard people say they're all full of steroids. There are no steroids in chicken. There never have been. I think maybe in the 70s or so, like 72, 73, somebody tried some, but it doesn't work. What it does, it gives them ascites, which is water around the heart. There's all kinds of heart conditions that cause, and basically chickens just die. If you try to give them some hormone or growth promoter that's a steroid type, it doesn't work. The best thing, if you want to grow more chicken meat, more breast meat, more thigh meat, depending on the breed and the hybrid bird that you bought, there are actually models, just like you can buy a BMW 5 Series or a 3 Series or a 7 Series or 6 or the 4. You know, chickens, there's Ross, you know, like a, used to be when I was in it, you could buy a Ross 508 male was like the best one to get. And with the female from another line, you cross them together. And each farm manager had the males of the breeders that they wanted to breed with the females, and then those breeders have grandparent stock, and there are smaller farms which are much more expensive that are much more biosecure that take care of those birds. Anyway, so stick with me. This will only be about a 10-11 minute video, I hope. Maybe it'll go longer. We might go 15. But the process is so clean. Oh, the free range chicken, all they do is on a chicken house for about 20 meters, they have to open from about 2 feet from the floor up. They have to open a little hinge door that goes up on a winch, or they can literally just put hinges on it. It's like the side of the building has to open up, and then they've got a chicken wire fence. Believe it or not, it's actually a chicken wire fence that's set up like a pen, and it goes out onto the property so that if the birds want to go out onto the free range, they're in a penned-in area that's surrounded by chicken wire, and they're directly under the sun, and they're away from the tight, compact space where they've got birds within inches all around them. But they always go back inside, because on the inside, that's where the feeders are, and that's where the drinking system is. And some of them are social, you know, they like to socialize. Some of them are also cannibalistic. They'll take one of the sick or ill ones, and they'll start pecking it to death, and you have to pull those out. When they start getting pecked on the neck, they will start losing all their feathers. For some reason, they'll pick on one and pick it to death, literally pick it to death. So let me read something about this article. It says, factory farm chickens responsible for many human infections. Analysis by Dr. Joseph Mercola. Story to glance. Urinary tract infections affect anywhere from 25 to 60% of women over the course of their lifetime, and hospitalization rates for UTIs in the U.S. rose by 52% between 98 and 11 as a result of increasing antimicrobial resistance. Now, he says antimicrobial resistance. If a bird is being given a broad spectrum antibiotic, like let's say it was one of them they used was generic, was gentamicin, okay? That produced a lot of breast meat and things. But what it can do is when the antibiotic is in the chicken meat, it can give you a resistance to that antibiotic. Now this part of it is true. Eating a lot of chicken meat but in a lot of places it's illegal, and the quantities you can give the birds is only if they're sick. You know, you're not supposed to be using it for growth promotion because it does give you antibiotic resistance. It's like taking too many antibiotics and then you don't have any more resistance to any new bacteria that are introduced to you, especially if you've gone up in scale to higher. But these are very weak, broad spectrum antibiotics, mycin types. Okay, it says researchers have found the reason UTIs tend to have such a high occurrence rate in postmenopausal women is because the infection can be caused by several different pathogens that are deeply embedded in the tissue, making them more resistant to elimination. In addition, E. coli bacteria in urine. E. coli is the #1 bacteria in UTIs for women. My mother is in a nursing home right now, and she just had it. Enterococcus faecalis and species in biopsy tissue, including E. coli, Staphylococcus hominis, and Bacillus firmus. About 80 to 90% of UTIs are caused by E. coli, I just said that, which is normally found in your intestinal tract. Problems only arise when this ordinary bacterium is present in high numbers in your urinary system. Recent studies have conclusively demonstrated that a majority of UTIs are caused by exposure to contaminated chicken. American, Canadian, European studies have all confirmed close genetic matches between drug-resistant E. coli. Now that is not mutually inclusive. That doesn't mean if you found this E. coli bacteria strain, the specific H22 strain, on this farm, and later you found that in the intestinal walls or the bladder of a postmenopausal woman, it does not mean that it came from the chicken, okay? It just means whatever the source is, could be from another animal, like let's say a rodent or a bird. That's your biggest biosafety hazard on a farm, are rodents and birds. You have to keep the birds away, and you have to keep the rodents away. And that's why a lot of farm managers have a ton of cats on the farm, by the way. Urinary tract infections affect anywhere, blah, blah. Let's read that. Let's go. Pathogenic mechanisms of UTIs. Women are more prone to urinary tract infections than men, in part because they're shorter urethras. Adult men have another factor going for them. Prostate gland produces a bacterial growth inhibitor. You know what else is a really great bacterial growth inhibitor? I'm not going to read this whole article word for word, but another great bacterial growth inhibitor for your entire body, your skin, anywhere, is a high pH. If you look at my videos on how to make ormus, and bacteria thrives in an acidic environment. If you drink Coke, which I don't mean Coke as a brand, I mean if you drink sodas, any type of carbonated drinks, their pH is around 3 pH, which is very acidic. That's close to exactly what hydrochloric acid and sulfuric acid are, 2.8 to 3. So if you start eating and drinking things like drink water and eat green leafy vegetables and products that give you a high pH, and as you start to eat those things, they'll get into your stomach and into your blood system and raise your blood pH. And it also helps you resist other diseases, because most diseases, bacteria, fungus, and even forms of some deadly diseases can be inhibited by a high pH in your blood system, which is good. So seek a high pH, and you'll just naturally have way fewer UTIs or any kind of, for me, skin irritation, since I'm very sensitive. All right. Signs of an E. coli infection: burning with urination, frequent urges to urinate, lower abdominal pain or aching, blood in your urine, sometimes but not always, cloudy or foul smelling urine. Let's see where it talks about the tick. Okay, let's go down. Factory farm chicken, the leading source of UTI infections. Conventional wisdom has maintained UTIs are primarily caused by a transfer of naturally occurring E. coli via sexual contact with an infected individual, and or the transfer of fecal bacteria from your anus to your urethra by poor personal hygiene. However, more recent studies have conclusively demonstrated that a majority of UTIs are actually caused by exposure to contaminated chicken. But I don't think they did. I've read the studies. They're drawing conclusions, you know. They're saying the sky is blue, therefore Jackie did it. That kind of thing, you know. Research published in 2006 confirmed that humans could develop antibiotic resistance by eating poultry treated with antibiotics. That's true. Bacteria from conventional chicken and those who ate such chicken were found to be more prone to developing resistance against Synarcid, generic names, different types of antibiotics. Okay, that's a known problem. And there are restrictions on what antibiotics you can give meat-producing birds. All right, so it says some of the resistance was attributed to a specific gene, and both the gene and the resistance were associated with touching raw poultry meat and frequent poultry consumption. Now, that doesn't mean that the bird has a strain of bacteria that goes from its body straight to your urethra through some contact channel. And it doesn't exclude other animals or sources of the bacteria, like packaging, supermarkets. You know, a lot of things in here, they're testing wholesale meats that have already been packaged, which gives it thousands of sources that could have just provided that bacteria is everywhere. Genetic matching links to UTIs to contaminants. So all they did, they took genetic links and they found the specific strain here, the ST131H22, which is known to thrive in birds. But you know what? I'll bet it also thrives in rats and cats and other animals that visit the farm and visit these chickens while they're alive. But you know, a chicken within a poultry farm that has been fumigated, quarantined, left empty before these new birds arrive, which come out of a sterile hatchery. I know I designed hatcheries. Not sterile. They come out of a clean environment. You know, if they didn't, they would be sick and they would be dying. You would not get your 88% average hatch rate of a viable chicken and then have your growth promotion and your feed conversion that you want on the farm if these birds were all suffering, even with a latent form of E. coli. Okay, when buying chicken and eggs, make sure they're organic and free range. I talked about that. There is no free range. Think about it. You cannot raise, let's say you had 35,000 chickens in a house, which is about what you would need to sell every 50 days to operate a business. Okay, so usually, you know, every month and a half to 2 months, you've got your flock out there, you put it in the market, then you leave the farm empty after you fumigate it and disinfect it. You get rid of the what's called the oocytes, the intestinal parasites, and you get rid of all the bacteria. So when the new chickens come, they've been disinfected, they're clean, and the farm is completely clean. So it's safer than somebody's chicken that's running around a barnyard with a rusted out Jeep and a bunch of rats and cats and other animals and dogs and everything they go out in the yard and pick at. They can't do that. They would be so infected, you would have no consistency. You wouldn't even know what your rates are for feed conversion. The weight of the birds would all be different. Some would be fat, some would be skinny. They'd be eating from different food sources. They'd be picking through the ground, picking up parasites. In fact, it does not happen. Free-range chicken is a loophole by the USDA and the Center for Disease Control, where they open that flap with the hinges on the chicken house, and as long as they let the chickens walk out into the penned yard under direct sunlight at any time they want on a free-range house, that's the free-range design, is the open sidewall. But they still have to come in and eat the diet that comes out of those little silos you see on the side of those chicken houses. Those diets are made by nutritionists, mainly corn, and they have to go in for the water, and they have to go in for the feed, and they have to go in for the fans, and they go in to socialize. So a lot of these reports they're just anti-chicken meat. They're anti-confinement, which I can also understand and relate to. And even they are talking about in this article how even vegetarians have the strains of this. This blows their whole report, by the way. They said even vegetarians have the same strain of E. coli found in their bladder, which what they said was, so they just doubted that the vegetarians were reporting correctly that they did not eat meat, because they obviously did, because it came from chicken, which is not a mutually inclusive deduction or induction, whatever. How to treat a UTI, I'm sure you know how, prevention. Now, the dangers of antibiotics in the chicken industry. That is true. There are dangers. If chickens have too many antibiotics and you eat it, you can get antibiotic resistance to whatever antibiotic they received. Your resistance to that will lower, so that if you were ever to be given that, let's say in a hospital or in an IV, because the same antibiotics are used for humans and birds, okay, basically. But the reason why this is true is because steroids do not exist in chickens. You know, so everybody says, oh, chickens have steroids. They do not. Steroids, like I said, it doesn't exist. It's a moot point. Nil. There's nothing a steroid does for a chicken, not like a cow. What grows their meat is antibiotics, and that's what you have to watch for. But it's not causing, like I said, the source of the E. coli comes, where do the chickens get the E. coli in the house? They get it from the rats and the cats and the birds. I don't know if the cats, but the cats eat the rats. It's a food cycle of animals eating matter from other animals. So, it's frustrating to listen to this stuff, because I know this article is written as pro free range natural organic chicken, but the doctor who's writing this, bless his heart, he doesn't know about the loopholes and what free range. You find me a free range farm where there's a farmer that's got 25,000 chickens just running around a field, and that's his flock for the 48 days. And then he'll take it to the slaughterhouse. Okay? And he's going to go, how's he going to go round them all up? How many people is he going to hire? How would he run an operation like that? How are you going to control the oocytes, the parasites, the bacteria, the birds, the rats? How are you going to control these chickens from staying out of stuff that's infected and rotting in the corner of the field or under a tree somewhere? It does not happen at all. I've been on chicken farms all over the world. So anyway, that's my rant today. Thank you for coming to Plain Mundane Show. Please hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell. And just wait until I put up another video. Y'all have a good day. If I can find the stop button. Bye.